Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see you all here. I'm also glad to say that we are not only here offline, but we are also joined for some people who don't have the opportunity to be at COP, but really have the interest to join the discussion. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the way that every of the speaker of this panel carries into this room, because each of us comes from a place that UN classifies among the most severe humanitarian crisis. And because in Sudan, more than 30 million people will need aid next year as conflict and displacement deepen. In Syria, over 34 million Syrians at home and abroad still require assistance after more than a decade of devastation. In Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories, more than 63% of all Palestinians now depend on human support, with almost the entire population of Gaza displaced. And in Ukraine, my own home, nearly 13 million people will require help. The full-scale war approaches its fourth year and the 12th since the 2014 invasion. And as we talk about youth agency and green recovery today, we are not speaking about abstractions, because we are coming from the middle of emergencies that are still unfolding, because none of the crises is over. Military actions continue in all of our countries, and for many of us, the situation at home shifts from week to week, from day to day, and even from hours to hours. And that is why, for some context, the topic of recovery might be highly sensitive. For example, for some, the recovery is possible, even if it's fragile. For other contexts, is still painfully distant and imaginable only in theory. That is why I want to invite every speaker during this panel discussion to actually ground our conversation into realities, because the topic of recovery can be very hopeful, but still it comes with the realities that our communities are forced to navigate through. There is a quote I came across online maybe a couple of days ago. It's a bit cheesy, but it stayed with me, because it says, if you continue to carry bricks from your past, you will end up building the same house. And since our world is changing, and we might still rely on the same old systems and assumption, we then risk rebuilding the same injustices that brought us here in the first place. And for many communities represented today, these injustices have been the daily reality for years and even decades. But the people sitting with us today are young leaders from countries shaped by war, occupation, and long-lasting violence. Yes, yet here they are sitting at COP30 at a climate conference and speaking about the future. They are imagining reconstruction, they are imagining justice, they talk about resilience and recovery, even if that future can feel uncertain, surreal, or painfully far away. And why? Because we still believe in fighting for something better. Because for us, hope is not naive, but strategic. And because imagining a just, green, and dignified future is an act of resilience. So my name is Valeria. I will be moderating this event. I am the co-founder and co-lead of the Youth4Climate initiative, an organization that advocates for a just, green recovery of Ukraine and the inclusion of young people in climate policy. And my work focuses on integrating feminist, intersectional, and decolonial perspectives into Ukraine's recovery. I began my climate activism in 2019 as a part of Fridays for Future Kharkiv, the city that is near the front line right now, and which is gets heavily shelled every day. But I've been representing Ukrainian youth at COPs and SB. I also was a co-organizer of regional conference of youth Eastern Europe, because our organization works on building regional solidarity in addition to the international, like worldwide solidarity. And earlier this year, I also joined the Youth Council under the Ministry of Environment of Ukraine, and was contributing to like youth contribution, youth engagement in national environmental policy making. But unfortunately, recently the ministry got restructured. So this is a little bit about me. And I would like to start our discussion right now. So could you tell me more about your personal and your organization's vision of the future that keeps you afloat? Because I remember that when the full-scale war broke out, I lost all of the hope, and I was in the moment of despair. And I found this hope exactly in the vision for a just green recovery of Ukraine, something that gives that vision that there is actually something to live for and what we can build together. So I would like to first invite Mохаммед Усроф. He's a Palestinian researcher, climate justice advocate, and political strategist from Han Yunis, Gaza. He's the founder of and executive director of the Palestinian Institute for Climate Strategy, where he leads research, advocacy, and youth empowerment at the intersection of energy justice, environmental governance, and decolonization. His work highlights how climate destruction is weaponized under occupation through land dispossession, water apartheid, and energy restrictions. Mohammed has represented Palestine at COP28, COP29, SB60, and UNGA, advancing just transition, demilitarization, and the recognition of ecocide and global climate governance. He co-authored Oxfam's Just Energy Transition and Green Colonialism report in 2025, analyzing fossil fuel expansion, transition minerals, and systemic inequality. As a Davis Peace Prize awardee, he has also led humanitarian and grassroots initiatives for displaced Gazan families. And Mohammed is currently applying for a PhD program on the political economy of energy, fossil fuel colonialism, and Palestinian sovereignty, and will be finishing his Master of Science in Sustainable Development this month from University College Dublin. So could you tell us more about your personal vision and also the vision of the Palestinian Institute for Climate Strategy? Because I know that you have your own manifesto that is called Recognize, Resist, and Rebuild, Manifesto for Palestinian Liberation and Ecological Justice.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I'm audible. Hi, everybody. Is my voice?
Yes, perfect.
Great. My name is Mohammed. Thank you very much for the introduction. I was just at COP and just landed in London from Bilam. So it's very unfortunate that I'm able to make it to this panel and just have the honor of being with the other panelists as well. I wish to start by saying that at COP30, 2 days before I left on the 17th of November, the United Nations Security Council adopted the US-Israeli resolution that will always be a stamp of shame in the work that we do at the United Nations. Not a single member of the council had the courage or the principle or any form of dignity to say that that vote, that to just go against the vote of the US-Israeli regime. It is really just colonialism in modern day to see Trump and Netanyahu's genocidal plan of Gaza now being endorsed by the UN. And that whole process is designed to break Israel's isolation and kind of rehabilitate it and rehabilitate its regime of apartheid and genocide, and to make sure that it continues the way it used to before the genocide, as if the genocide is over. But the genocide continues and normalization efforts continue. We saw that Kazakhstan just recently normalized ties within the Abraham Accords of with Israel, and we're seeing now moves with Saudi to normalize these ties. I mention all the politics because we are at COP and we see the governments that are complicit. And to me, as a Palestinian, it's a complete failure in terms of the efforts that we're doing and the visibility, as if Palestinian suffering under genocide was not enough. So and this is really important because we're talking about agency as youth and agency as people, but yet our agency is dictated by, again, the US-Israeli plans in these proposals, and the proposals are simply to take over Gaza and to continue to continue the genocidal attacks and to ensure that the global community is not able to defend Palestinians, and Palestinians don't have the authority to defend or even stand up for themselves, not in terms of resistance even. That aside, just the idea of reconstruction and rebuilding. So we have been completely let go, and completely forbidden of our freedom to dictate how our future should look like. So self-determination and sovereignty is no more. What that plan imposes is essentially an entrenchment of the occupation. So it's the whole plan that was dictated by the Tony Blair Institute, and to create a so-called Board of Peace and an international stabilization force created by literally every other colonial force to safeguard Israel's occupation and ensure that Gaza continues to be uninhabitable. From a climate perspective, Gaza is uninhabitable. It is completely destroyed. As you said, the entire Gazan population is displaced. I worked with the Palestinians who were displaced in Egypt. My family is one of them. So, and it's really sad because there's no point in returning, and there's no ability, there's no way to return legally and politically because of the blocking of the border between Egypt and Gaza by the Egyptians and by the Israelis. So what this brings me to is how do we as people mobilize against this, and how do we ensure that there's pressure? And that's what the BDS movement is about, and that's what boycotting does. And as the Palestinian Institute for Climate Strategy, we see energy as the main imperial sort of uh, driver to all of this. Not because of not because of the gas reserves in Gaza, not because of, the intention to exploit or to extract from Gaza, but rather in terms of how is the genocide being fueled, and how is empire being fueled, how is the infrastructure of apartheid being set in a way that apartheid and genocide happens just like that. So to me, energy is really important. So looking at the Kazakhstani, Azerbaijani, Turkish, South African, Colombian supply chains of oil, and I'm mentioning those countries because they're easier. Brazil is one of the countries that does send oil to Israel till today, and they're figuring different ways of doing it now. And we've seen and we've worked with union workers and dock workers and oil workers in Brazil and in Italy to block these shipments. And I think it's really crucial to continue pushing people to block these shipments and to ensure that Israel and the US doesn't have the motivation and doesn't have the capability of continuing this war on Palestinians. So it's a call to mobilize, it's a call to uphold international law, and it's really important to do that um, within these contexts. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question. With all of that you told us just about, with like all of the news that are coming that are making the situation even worse with every new day, you are still calling for mobilizing, calling for boycotting, calling for resistance. What drives you to do that instead of just falling into despair? Like, what vision do you have that you keep in mind that it always makes sense? Maybe it's the pursuit of justice, maybe like other vision for the future. Could you share a little bit about this, please?
Absolutely. All right, I thought we would be moving around between the panel, but I'm happy to just share an answer here because it's really simple. It's the fact that the entire panel and the rest of the world has systems of injustices that are complicit, systems that are very similar to the systems that we have in Palestine. And it's not, not to make it sound abstract as a system, but it's very simple logic of colonialism and imperialism that we see in Ukraine by Russia, that we see in Sudan, that we see in every other sort of nation. And it's simple power dynamics, and it's just about who are the drivers and who are the corporations that are continuing to drive them forward, either for profit or for simple imperial interest within other sort of interests, as the UK, as France, and others. So for me as a Palestinian, calling for energy embargoes against Petrobras, against Shell, Total, Exxon, ENI, Dana, all these different oil companies and gas companies. We call for a boycott against them, not just for the Palestinians, but because of the simple exploitation of the people in the different locales. In Colombia, Coca-Cola kills union workers and threatens them and threatens their families day and night. In South Africa, Glencore continues to extract from communities and families, and continues to spread pollution and spread their pipelines in different indigenous communities' lands, and that is completely unacceptable. And to me, that connection between our struggle and their struggle is very visible and very transparent. And Palestine, what's happening right now is not just, didn't happen yesterday, it didn't happen on October 7, and it didn't happen in 1948. It was in the 1916, after World War One, that the Sykes-Picot was signed, that the Sykes-Picot was signed, the Balfour Declaration was stated, the Hussein-McMahon correspondence was established, and we saw the introduction of these imperial logics. We saw how electricity was introduced for the Zionists and the Zionist lobby early on in the 1920s, when Israel wasn't created at all. So we saw how these infrastructures were set in place, the same way they were set in Nigeria, the same way colonialism still exists in many other nations, and that logic continues. And to me, mobilizing against the same efforts of colonialism happening in Palestine means also standing in solidarity and standing in power with other people in Palestinian liberation, or when we resist against these forms of colonialism. I'm working with people in Mexico and Colombia. I'm working with people in Sudan and South Africa. I'm working with people in the Philippines and the Pacific to understand how their struggles and mine is connected. And that's what the manifesto on our website and the one that we've been distributing talks about. We've done a series of workshops in Sweden, in Mexico, in Colombia, and all over. And the manifesto was written by the people. And to me, that's the biggest form of power, to see how that manifesto and to see how our work towards liberation looks like moving forward and how we want to do that together. So to me, it's about mobilizing power locally for global impact. And whether that's a vision for, a world where people have no borders and people own their own resources. I think the basic demands are very clear. People should own their own resources. People should have the freedom of movement. People should have basic human rights. People should have food and sovereignty and water and land, that it's theirs. And to me, this commodification of it, this colonialism of it, this financialization of it, for things to be turned into profit, for things to be turned into private property, for things to be turned into weaponizations, like forms of weaponization or weapons of war, is the basic, most complete response to, how is colonialism still present in 2025? It's very present. It's extremely present. And the UNFCCC and the UN spaces are ones to sort of normalize it, and we cannot normalize it further. Again, the Security Council was a stamp on that, and I think moving forward, it's just a matter of building power with different people and ensuring that we don't isolate ourselves, because that means that we're submitting to the enemy, and we cannot isolate ourselves. What's happening in Palestine is extremely connected to what's happening in every other country. And the manifesto starts with saying that. It says that Gaza is a microcosm of the world on fire from every lens, from surveillance companies, AI companies, war and military industrial complex, the media and the narratives, and corporations and fuel and oil and gas. It's all coming together very clearly, and that's why the world is waking up. So I hope that this can be a trigger to people all over, and that's what gives me hope, is that this is a moment that we cannot just let go of. And I do this because it's the only way to preserve memory. What's happening in Palestine is complete. I mean, what is genocide? What differentiates between war and genocide? Gaza is completely uninhabitable, and the land is completely gone. The memory is erased, and the heritage that we had for decades and millennia has completely been erased. And the only way to preserve that memory is to ensure that we continue talking about it and setting the narrative about it. There's so much effort in order to erase it. So it's a way for me to remember my own family. It's a way for me to live on their memory. I lost my entire father's side of the family, so this is the only way that I can live their memories on and make sure that they're not forgotten, and make sure that their loss was not gone to waste. And I hope that this is something that we can do for every other victim of genocide and war and of this imperial regime that we're in. So we need to normalize what consider radical, and we need to radical so form of poverty, and people can be homeless and people can live in genocide. That is not acceptable. So I'll just leave it there.
Thank you so much for sharing this heavy things with us. And thank you for giving this kind of like overview on how we need to transform in a very systematic way to kind of challenge all of the systems that we are living in right now. Here, I would like to pass this very question to Roa Al-Obeid. She is a climate activist and peace advocate from Sudan. She's the co-founder of United Beyond Borders, an organization that bridges geographical divides to build a community of young activists from conflict-affected countries in the MENA region. The mission of the organization is to equip youth with the knowledge, skills, and confidence to make a meaningful impact in climate negotiations and policymaking processes. She's also a Yango member and was delegate to COP20, the UN Youth Climate Conference prior to COP30. She co-created the COP30 platform to make climate knowledge accessible for non-English speakers. So could you tell us more about your own vision and the vision of your organization?
Okay, now, perfect. Thank you so much for the invitation today. So yeah, it's my pleasure to be here on a stage with Farah, someone that I really admire, and Mohammed too. So maybe I can start briefly about the story of United Beyond Border. It was like, it started from, I don't know, crying at midnight. So last year, 2 years back, there was a war started in my country. And you know, when there is a war in your country started, like the day before the war is not the day after the war. And suddenly the whole world is starting to see you in a different way. You are migrant, you are coming from conflicted country, you are internally displaced, and no one is welcoming you to their country. And that is how, like in one night, my whole life changed, and I have to adapt to the new life of being a refugee and being someone coming from conflicted country. So in 2024, I got selected for a program called Changemaker for Planet, and my friend Ola from Syria, both of us got selected. What connects me and Ola, both of us were coming from the same conflicted country, and she's from Syria, I'm from Sudan, different country, different continent, but then it was the same stigma that we are from conflicted country. So both of us will try to go to that program. We spent 2 months trying. It was in Egypt, like it's not even global north country. We try our best to travel. For me, I have been informed that unfortunately with your Sudanese passport, you cannot get a visa because Egypt decided suddenly to stop visa for Sudanese. For her, she applied, even she submitted all the paper, everything it was request. And then they told her, no, unfortunately, we cannot give you the visa just because you are Syrian. And it was really tragedy. And then for her, she managed to go there, but she had to pay like around $3,000 just to get travel permit to enter Egypt. And then after the program, me and her, we were like reflecting on how this was really tough for both of us, mentally, physically, everything. And then I was talking that, we both of us share the same pain. We share the same story, despite we are coming from different country, but then why we are not sharing the same solution. And then we sit together, and then we came up with the idea of United Beyond Border. From its name is obvious, like we are one united beyond border. We are united for one goal, despite where we are Sudanese, we are Syrian or Palestinian or from Lebanon. At the end, we have one goal, is one word that treat everyone in equality, despite where they are coming from. And then we start growing our organization with the mission that the youth and the children from conflicted countries should be in the room, should be heard, and we should not be like neglected or excluded because of the identity that we are coming from conflicted country. And then we start mobilize, we start locally in Sudan, Syria, then we added Lebanon, we added Iraq, we added Palestine, we added Yemen, Somalia, Libya. all of those countries, then we start with a case report, and then I was interviewing some of the youth activists from those countries. And then I was like, during the interview, I discovered that it wasn't just only me who are suffering. I was like, only us Sudanese were suffering this war. But I discovered that there is other people suffering the same, even after the conflict. For example, Libya, there is now no ongoing war, but still they're suffering after war. And it's not just the impact on the country itself, it's the impact of the youth, impact of mental health, and then the stress that the world is putting you. And then when in one day your country is not longer livable country, and then you have to keep pushing. At the same time, you are struggling mentally, you are struggling with your own family to complete your study because your country is no longer safe to study there. So many things, but then we say that if we all come together, we can like make the life better for us. And if you are not fighting for your own right, no one will fight for yours. And that is why we started locally in 2024. We did around 7 training on ground in Yemen, in a country that's very difficult to work with, in Sudan, in Palestine. We had so many on ground training because we believe that the youth of those countries, they are the one who should advocate for their own right. We are not waiting for US, UK to advocate or make our life better. We should fight for our own right. And that is why we started locally. This was our own focus. And this year we shift more for the mental aspect because we always forget about the mental aspect of everything. We are in COP, we are advocating, we are doing training, we are doing so many activities. But then we forget that we are dealing with human being that's suffering of stigma, suffering of trauma after war. Some of them, they lost everyone and everything, like what Mohammed mentioned, that he lost all his family from his father's side. And then we should fight for our own right, but also we never forget that we're human being. And that is we focus more this year with the mental aspect. And I think this is more my time. I will pass it. Yeah. More. Yeah, I think this is what we're now focusing on more with on the mental aspect. And we did training called Eco Hero, where we bring some activists from those countries who like did great job and like overcome the tragedy, and to show those who are still there losing hope, feel that there is still a hope. Like despite you lost everything. One of our speakers, she was Hadid. She was from Sudan, and she mentioned that the day she left Sudan, she left only with her passport, nothing. She lost everything in one day. But then because she had her faith and her determination, she could manage to rebuild her life. And now she's doing her master in Oxford and bring all her family to London. And it was so motivational for the rest to hear. And I think, we did more, but I have limited time. I'll pass.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. That was very nice to hear that even amid the hardships that all of you are going through, you still find the strength in uniting across the world. So I feel like this was the main message, and it was very powerful. Thank you. Now we have a speaker from Syria, Farah Assad. She is a Syrian climate action leader, social entrepreneur, and youth policy advocate. She is the founder and CEO of the Syrian Climate Pioneers Foundation, a women-led organization that advances climate adaptation, environmental education, and green entrepreneurship across Syria's governors. Farah is also a Blue Peace Middle East Youth Ambassador, contributing to regional cooperation on water governance, and a young professional at the 2025 Asia Pacific Cities Summit at Mayors Forum. Her work spans cross-sectoral projects on water, energy, food systems, urban resilience, food safety, innovation, and youth-led climate diplomacy. As a co-founder and business leader in the tech sector, Farah also drives a sustainable innovation and digital transformation through multiple AI-enabled solutions in the UAE and the region. Farah has represented Syrian youth at global platforms, including COP28, COP29, and the UNFCCC COI, and continues to advocate for inclusive climate action in conflict-affected communities. Again, the same very question, what is your vision while you are doing your work, and what is the vision of your organization, the Syrian Climate Pioneers Foundation?
First of all, am I audible? Yeah, I can't hear myself. First of all, I would like to show my appreciation. Like after 2 years from doing the same panel in COP28, that the moment I arrived to Syria after that panel, I went to investigation for 3 days in prison. Like how you can support Ukraine, how you can talk with Ukraine outside Syria. So I feel appreciated and satisfied that I'm in the same panel after 2 years supporting Ukraine. And the all my friends from Sudan. That panel, I don't think Roa was with us, but Sudan was with us, with other young leader, and with the same with Mохаммед Усроф himself. So I would like to share with you my satisfaction with Ukraine, supporting Ukraine to the last breath. Actually, being here after that moment, with more strong word to use, I was like studying my every word that I used back then, because I know that panel is not good for that government. I don't know if you know that now we have a new government in Syria, a new regime. They call it free regime, but I would like always to keep an eye how free it is. That I will always use any other platform to share that you want to be open eyes. We have open eyes on each, even on every step that they are taking, just to align with our goals. In this panel, I will share our work on the Syrian Climate Pioneers. We started 3 years ago in 2023. 2022 actually, we officially registered in 2023. After we organized the ELCOI in Syria, just to be in line with the Syrian youth, to share with them, you can be a decision makers. Then we recognized that some of these youth are not educated enough to know what climate change is. Back then, the prioritization was pretty much different. You cannot differentiate between having food on the table or climate resource shortage. So climate resource shortage is, okay, we are now facing a crisis. We don't have a food, so it's about the president. It's about, as Mohammed said, it's a whole system of injustices. So we have to differentiate between each injustice that we are facing. The injustice even come from the people themselves. I'm not always with politicizing everything that we are facing. Of course, the politics now has a strong effect in our countries, and getting visa actually is part of it. Getting visa, if I always shed the light that I want to get a visa, I want to get a visa, it's about politicizing each work I'm doing. Okay, I always facing having visa issue, even to Brazil. I get it too late. Even in the embassies, now I know how to get a visa because I went through a lot of embassies, and you know about this. But okay, we don't have a visa because we born in this country. Being a young leader, how we can do about it? How we can mobilize more youth to be there? How we can mobilize our? Okay, we are here. This is the responsibility for me to represent all the Syrians that they didn't make it here, even from the visa issues, from any other issues. I am that voice, not the Syrian Climate Pioneers Foundation voice. Okay, this is my foundation, but I hold the responsibility to be the voice of the whole Syrians. So now we are working in the Syrian Climate Pioneers, just to back to the question, on the green entrepreneurship, because we are aware that there is a brain drain in the whole region, and we share this challenge with the whole region. So the green entrepreneurship shed the light or help the whole region to keep the brain in the community. And actually, the new government supports us to do so by supporting the ecosystem, being more mature, supporting more investment to get in, supporting more solutions to be in the region. So actually, this is part of what we do, and the climate education, of course, to get people to know more about the climate education and to differentiate beyond priorities, and of course, the agriculture and all the climate majors. We support also academics to be in the major. Me myself, I'm not a specialist in climate issues, any other issues. I'm an English literature graduate and policy from Harvard. So I don't know anything about. Actually, I don't know, but I didn't study anything about climate. I know how to do advocacy. I know how to mobilize youth to be in platforms. I know to use an NGO to be for the youth, from the youth. Yeah, so basically this is what we do. You can, if you have any other question.
Maybe just a small kind of like and follow up. What is the big idea that you work for? So again, like you're talking about climate education, working with youth, but what is the general idea towards what are you doing?
Actually, our vision is an eco-friendly culture, because we believe that culture is the core change. We travel and we notice how the change, starting from the culture, not from the law, how change. Like the European Union, if you start noticing how they reduce their emission by 40%, it's about culture. And they look at you, if you are using anything non-friendly, they look at you at that. It's a culture. But in UAE, it's all about law. If you don't see a camera, I know that. If you are not in the place that has a camera, okay, you can do whatever you want. It's a law. It's not a culture. Is it sustainable? Of course it's not, because it needs a lot of operation, police operation, and a lot of other operation just to keep everything aligned, everything friendly, even in the plastic use. Okay, the law has power, but the culture has more power. So because of this, we believe that changing the culture by theory of change, by raising awareness and then social responsibility. After social responsibility, we have the advocacy layer. After the advocacy layer, we have the decision making. So we can affect both the cultural part and the political part, not the political part, the policy part.
Thank you so much. All of the speakers have already mentioned some of the things that we're going to go through in the next question. However, I'm here also not only as a moderator, but speaker representing Ukraine, and I would also love to answer that question, because again, here I represent Ukrainian youth and the Rozhlyanuto Youth Climate Initiative, and because if you remember at the beginning of this discussion, I mentioned that the full-scale invasion broke out. I felt a huge feeling of helplessness and despair at the idea of green recovery that the Ukrainian society was starting to talk about was really something like something like kind of like fresh air for me. And this is when we actually decided to, start our Rozhlyanuto Youth Climate Initiative. But with all of the activities that are doing right now, there stands this vision that we want a structural transformation, and that begins kind of right now, because for young people in Ukraine, we want to, even with all of the all of the struggle that is going on, we still believe in something better, and we, as Rozhlyanuto, fight for a just, green, and democratic future. And I would like to maybe just describe what every of these words mean, because when we talk about just requires placing social and climate justice, workers' justice, and health and well-being as core priorities of our recovery. And we also insist on financial transparency, intersectionality, and the end of oligarchic rule, which is very present, which is have been present in Ukraine. The green aspect means that we demand massive expansion of renewables and fossil fuel phase out. Again, like long-term energy and food strategies. We are talking about the need to criminalize ecocide, to protect our nature, our fields that give us food, or our rivers that give us water, because of where they are polluted. And even though we, let's say, even let's say if the war ends, there's still a lot of risks that recovery carries. For example, that some of the policies might just not take into account the environmental aspect. And for us, environmental aspect is actually like one of the core parts of this recovery. And again, this is why it's green. And democratic is that we envision community leadership in just transition. We also foster international unity, cooperation, and regional cooperation. And for what we envision for a country, that Ukraine is kind of like a beacon of democracy and justice, and climate policy is central in focus. So again, we also work with young people. We also see the same very challenges that you've already voiced, for example, for the lack of climate education, maybe like superficial understanding of the topics, maybe also like seeing how it impacts all of our lives, or may intersect with different topics and sectors. And as I've said, okay, I also wanted to add something about Razvi, is that we also have this intersection of youth and feminism. This is the nexus that we are focusing on, and this is what is still lacking in Ukraine, even though some of the like individual activists exist that do this work, but still we want to create kind of like a whole movement that works on this nexus. Now I would like to move to the second part of our discussion, because you've already mentioned mental health as one of the problems. You've mentioned climate education. Military occupation was also among the things that we were already talking today. So when I was preparing for this panel, I was studying each of the cases, like each of the countries, and what I found, what common problems that I found, given our not similar, but again, like the context of war and occupation, is that we all have large-scale displacement. We have the collapse or disruption of education systems. We have prolonged humanitarian emergencies. We have we still are in the search of justice and accountability, and we also have widespread mental health impacts, while the ongoing military actions are still there. So I would like to ask you a question: whether you agree that the aspects that I've just mentioned apply to the context of your country, and thus maybe hinder all of the recovery discussions and things, because again, like for some of our countries, recovery is very, very distant, but we would like to hear all of the challenges that you're facing. And I would like to start again with Mohammed. Please tell me, do you agree that these challenges are present for for the context of your country, as well as maybe you can share some unique that haven't been mentioned, and they are solely like context shaped by the context. Okay. Okay, so Mohammed isn't with us, so I will pass the floor to Roa, please. So should I remind the question, or yeah?
Okay. So yeah, the question was about the challenges that we face in the context of conflict-affected country. So maybe I can start the story of ELCOI Sudan 2023. So usually the application for the ELCOI started earlier the year. So we submitted the application when there was no war and no one expected that war in Sudan. And then suddenly the war started, and at the same time we already got the approval. We were so excited for the approval, but at the same time we were shocked, literally shocked about what happened in the country. And then for 2 months we were like postpone everything. No one even mentioned that ELCOI because we have other things to focus on. And I remember I was talking with Nisreen. Maybe some of you know Nisreen. She's an advocate for the activist for the last 10 years, and she's always the voices of Sudan. So I told her that we got the approval, but you see the wars happening in Sudan. Do you think that we should just decline and then forget everything? She told me, Roa, do you think that climate change know that there is war in Sudan? And then they will decide it like, I don't know who is the climate change, but she told me, are they going to decide that this year because Sudan is not happening, so we will stop all the effect of climate change in Sudan, and then maybe next year we'll come back, or it will happen? And at the same time, the same year, there was flood, there was so many effects of climate change in Sudan. And she told me like, unfortunately, because when there is a war happening in a country, everyone focus on the war and they forget that we have education, we have climate change, we have health, we have other system. It's not just one system like, okay, peace is the SDG number 1. No, number 16 actually. It's peace and SDG, but it's not the only SDG, that it's not the only thing that we have to work on in life. And unfortunately, this is what the difficulty, not just for us, it was for the how to advocate the youth. I remember when I was talking with some colleagues who are planning to work with me in ELCOI. I told them like, guys, we need to work on the ELCOI, and they were like, Roa, there is war in the country. Do you still think about climate conference? Are you like sure? And I was like, no. And I struggle, like I have to fight and speak for long hours just to convince them to work. And then after that, there was the other study as struggle about the financial, because the same, all the NGO, all the private sector, everyone put all the financial resources for the military. And then they forget everything. Like they forget that we have a life, we have other things to do. And then we were like, we literally reached to almost 50 partners. None of them, like they were like, are you sure you're asking about money for climate conference when there is a war in the country? And I was like, yeah, we are sure. But, and it was really challenging. And then we ended with zero fund, literally zero fund. But we have some youth, they were like having hope and faith, like we need to do it. We need to work for it. And then with the fund, we managed to organize ELCOI. So I can't imagine how we did it, but we did it. Because when there is a will, there is a way. And also sometimes you need to think out of the box. Yeah, money is super important for any event, for anything that you work on. But at the same time, it's not like you cannot work without money. And we manage through partnership, we manage through like finding other way, convincing other people to work with us. We manage with little fund to organize ELCOI. And when I remember how we, like in 2023, when the war just started and the system is called up, and the city that we organized the ELCOI just 1 month after the ELCOI, it was bombed, and it was everyone in that city was displaced. And it was in very fragile situation, and also just to get the approval for the ELCOI, the team on ground had to it was investigated by the police, it was investigated by the ministry. It was like we have like around 7 days of continuous investigation, because they were like, they didn't believe that we are organizing event during this time. And I know that it will be the same situation in other countries. I work with some colleagues in Yemen. In Yemen, it's also super complicated to organize an event, to just get an approval to organize an event. But I always believe that if there is a will, there is a way. There is a struggle. There is anything that you imagine in those contexts. But at the same time, if you have your will, you will manage to organize it, as we manage to organize ELCOI in the middle of a war.
I still have a question. So you were telling that it became hard to talk about climate when the war broke out in 2023. What were the climate efforts in Sudan before the beginning? Was it kind of a very discussed topic, or was it still not really a priority, and now it just went down the list, even like lower? And also, do you think that because when comparing with the discussions that we have in Ukraine, there's always this kind of fight between the urgent measures that should be taken, and again, like what should be funded, and the long-term solutions. So is this what you were talking about? Is this about this kind of conflict between how do we balance all of these needs that overlap and should be taken care of, but at the same time we still like lack I don't know, people, funding, and so on?
So, okay, the situation in Sudan was, I not say challenging, but we still have that stigma. And so we have that myth that climate is not real. And in 2019, the youth start to realize that climate change is real, and also other youth, we have a role, because before that everyone was believing that the negotiation, those stuff are the task of the government, and the youth, we don't have hand on it. And then they were thinking that other youth your role just to organize workshops, to organize a conference, that is. And then in 2019, it was COP26 in Glasgow, I think, yeah, if I'm correct, yeah. So in COP26 in Glasgow, the government, surprisingly, there was a program for training negotiator. There was one of our own negotiator decided that, and with support of Nisreen, decided that we need to have official youth delegate to the COP26, and then it was. Okay. It's outside us, okay. So we try to raise my voice. Yeah, in 2019, there was official delegate from Sudan for the first time, and then it was application that circulated everywhere, and then everyone was curious to know, like, what is COP, what is climate conference, like everyone was curious. And then after that, there was starting a new chapter, and even the government were very supportive. After some activists like Nisreen, they were pushing for years, and then we reached that point that we have official delegates from Sudan. And then we will start ELCO, the first ELCO in Sudan, it was 2020. And then there was new era for Sudan in climate change. And even we expect 2023, because the COP was in Dubai, we expected that to have the biggest delegate from Sudan. But unfortunately, we were moving forward, and then suddenly the war started, and then we are in the minus, unfortunately, right now. And it's still so challenging, is to convince the youth to think about something beside the war, to get a funding, to get to travel, and also because beside everything we're struggling with our own problem. For me, for example, I've been at university for 8 years because my university closed because of the war, and you still have so other issue in your life to solve, but at the same time you need to think about your community, the climate change, the negotiation, those stuff. So it's still very challenging. I don't know. I still have some hope in Sudan, but I think it's to reach the point of 2023, we need to work almost for 2 or 3 years to reach that point again, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. And could you shortly comment maybe on the situation, on the situation about education in Sudan? Because as far as I know, all the universities and schools are closed. It's mostly online learning, but there's also some problems with connectivity. therefore,
for 2 years, and then all the things that they were feeding at that time, like it was just war, fight. So imagine how this kids, when he grow, will be thinking. He was left behind the world was moving, but they were still because my university was closed, I started doing everything online. I thought, okay, this is an opportunity for me to learn something beside medicine. But for those kids, I don't think that they have the opportunity to think about something else. And unfortunately, 2 years is not something like short. Like it's 2 years of their life being lost, and 2 years they are left behind. 2 years they are, even there's a gap. And now, luckily, the schools started to open again, and they start their year. But imagine after 2 years, are they going to remember what they studied in the year before? So it's really, really unfortunate. And I think UNICEF, they were doing great job with e-learning, especially with at the refugee camp. But it's still because of the government, it wasn't their main focus, unfortunately, education. And there is a huge gap now in Sudan. And I don't know how that gap will be solved. UNICEF, they did some great e-learning program in so many states, but it's still like there is a huge gap that happened in Sudan because of the ongoing war, unfortunately.
thank you for sharing that. I'm passing the floor to Farah. I know that Mohammed is back, but we will proceed like in this, this is our new queue. So do you remember the question? Should I remind you? Yeah. Okay.
I'm good. So for the challenges, I'll be very short on this because stating the challenges is pretty much easy now, because every time we have to press on any challenge that we are having just to raise funds, to advocate for what we are doing. I'll just take a moment just to support Rua. In your community, you are really an inspiration in such an war that is going. Just let me call it war or maybe conflict that you are having. You are really an inspiration. Being here is an inspiration. So total support. We were there. So for the challenges, of course, we are facing the brain drain now because Syria in the phase of early recovery, building infrastructure. That's why we are working on climate adaptation. It's always about the infrastructure, the destroyed infrastructure. And mentioning the infrastructure, I would like also to mention the education infrastructure. Now we have children at the age of 18 and 17 and 16. They don't even know how to read, how to write. And this is, in this century, it's pretty much the biggest challenge that we are having to advocate for whatever we want other than climate. And of course, we have the economic stability. Still, we don't have the economic stability. And of course, the discrimination that it's going higher and higher in levels, because now we have different type of discrimination. Before we have discrimination before the regular types of discrimination. Now they are creative in discrimination. They are creating I can discriminate someone because his political point of view. You are with someone, I'm not with that someone. Even if me and you are with the same one, you are supporting this idea about that one, and you are the other one supporting another idea about the same one. So this discrimination, high level of discrimination, religion, political, it's dividing people. I mentioned this in the Climate, Peace and Security Conference in Nairobi because we were the expert representing youth. I mentioned the discrimination being the main linkage between peace and security and climate. If you think about it, I want to confess someone that you are facing a climate pressure, and at the same time he went to their home, to his home, and there is no peace at the level of the home. His father has an point of view, and his mother has another point of view. So it's pretty much the hardest way that we can get to a community, because in the same household, no one agreeing on the same point of view. And actually, we have a comedy show now that the mother has a point of view and the father has a point of view after the regime. So actually, now we have a new challenge that we want also to advocate to. It's part of the system of injustice being from people to people. It's injustice from people to the same people. So it's also a challenge that we want to address across the sectors. Now, okay, we work on climate. I told you I were in prison. So in prison, they told me, okay, you planted trees. What do you want about Ukraine? Go out from politics. I'll say it in Arabic. So policy and politics in Arabic is the same word. That's why we face a lot of issues. It's siyasa for policy and siyasa for politics. That's why they didn't differentiate between the two. So now it's the dictatorship. It's apart from the list of challenges. I remember me and Daula and the other people that we were organizing El Koi Syria. We want to mention that we want to drop off the sanctions. Are we allowed to state this? No, it's about US. No, don't mention it. And we spend the night just, can we not? We have to consult someone. Yeah, this kind of challenges now we don't have, but in the other we have the discrimination, the not clarity, the foggy space of advocacy. Even the word advocacy was a crime. Even our theory of change and our portfolio, we mentioned, other than the advocacy, we mentioned getting people together. So yeah, this kind of challenges has replaced with other type of challenges. How we overcome these challenges, I don't know if that's the other question.
We will talk about different initiatives about post-war recovery. That maybe then, yeah.
Okay, other initiatives in Syria?
Yes, but like after this question, because we still have Mohammed in Ukraine, but we will return to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed, are you with us? No, okay. But then I will say again, like a few comments about the situation in Ukraine, because I've already stated 5 of the elements, and I just want to expand on them because they kind of like put these conditions to recover. So Russia's full-scale invasion has pushed more than 6 million Ukrainians abroad and over 5 million inside the country out of their homes. This means that entire communities, they are scattered, and there is no stability in certain communities to actually do something on the ground. There's also the problem with poverty and housing because of this displacement, and more than 1.5 million homes have been damaged and destroyed, and it affected 3.4 million people. And without housing, people have no place to return to. There are initiatives that work on creating affordable housing, but still it's not on the level that is currently needed. And because of this, because people cannot return, the recovery still remains kind of fragmented. There's the demographic situation and human capacity, because if we want to talk about recovery, we need those experts. And this is where actually the potential for young people lies, but we'll talk about it a little bit later. But Ukraine population has shrunk, and around 6.8 million people. Many of them are skilled professionals. They were forced to leave the country. Many of them are working age. So these are women, children, and people between like this working age of 30, 40 years old. This kind of like contributes to effects that institution and communities, how do they operate under this constant strain of lacking all of those people. The fourth one is education. I feel like for me, this is also like one of the biggest ones, because in Ukraine, more than 1,600 schools and 780 healthcare facilities have been damaged or destroyed. And about 40% of children still rely on online or hybrid learning. For example, my sister, she's not a school student, but she's a university student, and she studies at the same university as I did in Kharkiv, which is getting shelled, which gets shelled every day. So she studies online, but I do see how this is not that type of professional education, not the way in which the professional education should be done. And again, this fifth element of mental health and social well-being, because after the years of the war in the east of Ukraine, and also after the full-scale war, there's a huge need for psychological support, and it exceeds the capacity that can be provided by institutions, because there's trauma, there's displacement, there's family separation, and it all puts kind of this pressures that are actually are very they are not visible. And so these are the conditions under which Ukraine approaches recovery, and among the challenge of occupation, because 20% of Ukraine's territory is occupied, and we don't know what is going on those territories. And again, the daily ballistic and drone attacks that makes everything harder. We have damaged energy infrastructure, which also kind of affects how people can navigate their daily life. And so even if we are thinking about recovery, there are a lot of changes that are in front of us. Okay, and I would like to maybe shorten a little bit the question number 3 and question number 4, because they are quite similar. But could you please tell about first of all, is the word recovery present in your countries or not yet, or maybe some other nuances about it? So do people actually talk about it? For example, you mentioned that you have like you're rebuilding infrastructure in Syria, but there's a completely different context in Sudan. So what are the conversations around recovery? Are they present? And also, what initiatives are already there? Maybe some policies, maybe some, I don't know, national frameworks, but also community-led initiatives. Maybe community-led initiatives are the number one of who's driving the recovery. So please tell more about this, and also if you could comment more on the financial responsibility. So, for example, if your recovery is already underway, or you think that it's going to be underway in like distant or sooner or later, who should pay for it? Who is paying for it right now, or who should pay for it?
Okay. So yeah, when we're talking about recovery currently in Sudan, yeah, there is some city, because the war is the militia and the military, they were fighting together. So they attack a city and then they move to another city. So the city, like after the military get lead on it, they say is on the recovery state, and including my city, back Khartoum. So unfortunately, they say that now it's a city under recovery, like Khartoum and other state, all the state in the north and the West Sudan. Now they say that they are safe, and even they will keep telling like people come back to the country, come back from where you are. They start like forcing the student from university to go back to the university. But unfortunately, the situation is unlivable because they just focus that the recovery means that people should come back. It's not about the people come back. If I don't have infrastructure, what I'm going to do? If there is no hospital in the neighborhood, where I'm going to get treatment? And this is unfortunately the situation right now. There is some city that, okay, theoretically peaceful to stay at, but they are lacking the basic need. And then because there was push from the government through education, because all the universities are back in the capital, and then they mentioned that they're going to close all the external center, and also they are stop all the online education, so everyone should be pushed back to come back. And then including my own university, they start operating back in Khartoum. But when the student they came, they were shocked. Like there is nothing. Even the university itself is not like it's not a place. There was no electricity. There was a lecture there. There was no electricity. There was no the simple need for a university. And then because unfortunately there was no external support from government or NGO, the students themselves. This is from my own university. The students themselves they raise funds to rebuild the university because no one is doing that. And unfortunately, this is the situation in Sudan. They literally rebuilt the university in 1 month, and then after they finished everything, the minister came and took beautiful photo, and then they said like, yeah, the university now is welcoming the student. You can come back and study. When they did nothing, they just show up on the last day. And unfortunately, this is now the situation. Like there, all the support is coming from the community-led organization. Some NGO like IOM, they still doing great job in Sudan, so they are supporting the project. The government they are trying, but unfortunately, because all the financial resource is coming to the military, is coming to like because the main focus like how to take lead on the whole country. So all the financial is going there, and that is very little amount is going back to the education and the hospital. There is some effort hospital because of the war, around 79 hospitals they were out of service, and then they suddenly discovered that everyone came back. We need hospital because people get sick, and then they start let's invest in hospital. So there was some investment in hospital. Some hospital they are going back to activity, but still that is not enough because the whole city is shut down for 2 years. No one was there, and then suddenly everyone came back. So you need so much effort, but unfortunately, like the effort that they are putting is way below the actual need of the.
Basically, it can be said that since we were talking about green, like climate resilient recovery, this is how some of the governments or maybe some of the communities want to approach recovery in their countries. But from what you have been saying, you can see that it's not only about, I feel like there is no strategy at all about recovery. So even though they talk about it, they do not really put a lot of thinking in how to make those towns livable, like really serve the people that would live there. It's just something about, as we said, conquest, right? So it's just like the capture of the city, and then they start renewing. But that is just like for the sole purpose of just people living there.
I can at some point, lastly, that also when you talk about recovery, you need to think about holistic approach, because recovery is not just one thing. It's not just the city is safe. It's not just you have a food. It's not about electricity. It's holistic approach, because at the end of the day, you are talking about human being. Those human being, they need so many stuff in their life, and unfortunately, this is also one mistake that we usually done in my country, that they don't think in holistic way. It's just one thinking on one thing, and then I will put all the effort on that thing and forget everything beside. And then, like the whole system will fall down, because the human being, they don't not have the basic need of life.
That's terrible. Thank you so much. Farah, your turn.
For the recovery, it's now the main word about Syria. The new regime, we will recover everything that you have lost. We will build infrastructure about returnees. We want Syrian back. You know that Syrians are now refugees all around the world, and the main focus now to get them back. And I totally agree with Ru'a said, how you will get them back without infrastructure. I used to have a hospital in the neighborhood. Now I don't have hospital. Okay, secure me hospitals, secure me good education, secure me whatever livelihoods tools that I will need, so I will get back. So recovery is there. Livelihood is there. So now it's about returnees and what situation they will find, and all the influencers, the Syrian influencers, should we come back? Should we not? So it's basically about that, and the topic that it's always pressure on. It's advocacy actually. So we have a topic, pressure. We are talking about this topic. It's advocacy. So about what we are doing about it, and how I see, it's about my point of view. These are going for the infrastructure, and it's not now. We don't use the community-led use for this. It's all about economic. It's all about investment, and even the president has mentioned in some conference in Saudi Arabia that we need it. It's a gap. So there is a business. So business, we need entrepreneurs, we need investment, so we can build all these households. Now the one house in Damascus, the capital of Syria, is more like in the main roundabout in Syria. If you want to buy a house there, it's more than $2 million in a destroyed country. It's insane because now they are coming back, they have money, but there is no offering. Offering vs the prices, it's high because there is no offering. So they are offering some household to real estate to be there, to be built in the destroyed areas, to share with the owners some percentages. This is about the, I'll mention that about the building, about everything. But in the contrary, we have the mental recovery, we have the education recovery, we have the awareness recovery. This is our responsibility, because in the contrary, they are investing money. There is a gap. They are coming from all over the world to invest in this country, so it's coming. And now there is multiple entrepreneurship initiative that's happening to support this ecosystem. In the contrary, we will be at the community-led youth or any initiative that is community-led, women-led, whatever, to support what's happening in the background, like the education, the awareness, to support what's happening, to support the returnees to come back, to be the community that hosts well these returnees, to be positive and speaking. So actually, this is what we can do.
Thank you so much. In Ukraine, the word recovery is also like one of the main words. So the first one is victory, the second one is recovery. But I cannot really say that like green recovery is very popular. I'm in my eco chamber where it is very popular, and this is kind of like the only option. But for the rest is kind of like a very, I don't know, even maybe a controversial matter, especially when like this summer, the Ministry of Environment got merged with the Ministry of Economy. And so there are different interests that are now ruling all of the discussions and like, you know, taking over them. But I would like to we have two speakers left. One is Roxani and one is Milena that is joining us online to talk exactly about youth projects. Because when we talk about, for example, recovery in Ukraine, there's a lot of initiative that young people are taking because they carry a lot of determination inside of them. They have I feel like they're very strong and they have all of the vision, and this is what drives them. And I would like to first Milena, let me. Okay, so we have Mілена Комар. She is the director of Kyiv School of Energy Policy and the leading Ukrainian institution for education of energy and climate experts, policymakers, and analysts. Their area of expertise includes the capacity building, climate, energy, and social change. In the last 5 years, Kyiv School of Energy Policy team developed a number of educational programs for Ukrainian experts in collaboration with the international institutions that contribute on both national and local level to the accession of Ukraine towards the European Union, better policies, and human capital development. So Milena is also Milena's team is also an awardee of the Youth4Climate initiative, and she will share she will share with us her project that won the competition as an example of what youth-led projects are there in Ukraine.
Thank you so much, and it's a big pleasure for me to represent, to speak on behalf of my team. I hope that
sorry, we can't hear you.
Okay, I hope this is up to the technicians to make it possible so that you don't read my mind but actually can hear me. Okay, let me know when you hear me. Yeah, thank you, Oleg. Yeah, but I guess that's
so
on Zoom.
People online can hear Milena?
Yeah. Okay, I hope guys make it happen.
Actually, Milena, I hear you in online.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. What?
I guess that this is the technical team that have to figure it out.
Okay.
So
we are checking out what might be wrong.
I'm hopeful that technical team can resolve that.
Oh, okay. No, okay, yes, we can hear you.
Now better. All right, this is amazing. Good. So morning for Brazil and good evening for our part of the world. It's actually a big honor and pleasure for me to speak on behalf of my team, which is actually very young, motivated young women. And so you'd ask maybe how we ended up being the awardees of this respectable competition that and having the project that we are about to execute in Ukraine. But before I would say that, I would like to make a few steps back and to say that I was very impressed and at the same time so inspired to hear all of your stories, being as well activists in your countries, but thinking so outside the box and so thoroughly trying to really motivate and to multiply the voices of actual people around you. I would say this is something that we started as a school. 6 years ago, we saw that the only pathway that Ukraine can take in order to be economically prosperous, to strive socially and energy-wise, climate-wise, is to join the EU. And 6 years ago, it was, to be quite honest with you, it sounded more like a fairy tale rather than a realistic pathway. But we just sat down and thought, okay, maybe someone can laugh about it, but what we can do to try at least contribute to some efforts for this to become true. And we realized that, well, we can contribute to recruiting people into the sectors that are lacking those real people, real experts, analysts, managers, lawyers. And it was the sector of energy that we started from 6 years ago with very simple programs that we were offering for Ukrainian specialists here who wanted to switch to energy. Then a few years after, when EU accession track became not a miracle, but a reality for us, we realized, okay, but there are a lot of climate expectations from the country that is joining the EU. And as well, we realized that we don't have enough specialists to make sure that this track will not fall behind, and we would as well comply with the requirements of the European Union. So with that in mind, as well, us as a school, we started to offer some really simple programs for people who wanted to enrich their professional pathway and career with energy as a sector, as a career choice. And the project that we've offered, and we would be really honored to execute in 2026, works specifically for the audience of local communities. I must admit that, yes, it is really hard to operate in times of war. A lot of centralized systems are falling apart. They are failing us as citizens. And what I think stands out in Ukraine, that citizens didn't fail the system. And by citizens, I would say those representatives of local communities who said, okay, we do not expect any help from the outside. We hear this is our community, this is our schools, this is our hospitals, this is our infrastructure, this is our air, this is our efforts to make it livable here. And for people who are left, we want to make sure that they want to keep on developing here in those communities, staying there, and perhaps maybe one day some people would like to come back to our communities. So for next year, we would offer a project for 25 local communities that will undergo a comprehensive capacity building program, as well as receive support from our side to develop very concrete step-by-step plans for improving the air quality in their communities, but as well look on a more helicopter view at their climate agenda and their climate policies that they would like to as well add to the things that they are as a community thinking policy-wise. So this is something that we would do, but please don't, in the end of the day, that will be people from those communities that we believe as well would form a strong baseline for others to catch up. Just for context, in Ukraine, we have more than 1,800 communities. So you can imagine 25 is just a drop in the ocean. But this is the way that networks work, and this is how working with people works. You start with very small group of people, and then you manage to multiply and have the result. So since we're a little bit limited in time, and I would really love to connect with you all in some further situations, because as I mentioned, I'm very much inspired by what you guys do, and I wanted as well to give a special credit to the organizers of this panel, Rozvík NGO. Girls, you really inspired me as well here in Ukraine, and I would really look forward to cooperating with you in further years that we would be doing this project. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great continue of this panel.
Thank you so much. That was also very inspiring, like the way why you started, what was your purpose, because again, we already talked about was that we need to work more on capacity building for all of the people who will be working on the recovery. Okay, thank you so much. And our last speaker is actually a representative of the Youth4Climate initiative. Maybe I will allow you to introduce yourself by yourself, right? And Roxani will tell you more about the program, because if you are planning, maybe you are looking for some funding for your initiatives, then this might be an option to grow your impact. So please.
Hi, everybody. And first of all, let me just say how much I respect and admire everything that the other speakers here are doing to bring the voices of young people from their countries to the world. And just to acknowledge that I'm also here on behalf of the colleagues at UNDP Ukraine who are not able to be here at COP. And on behalf of the Youth4Climate initiative, which is UNDP's small contribution to bringing resources to this amazing work, right, that we've been hearing about. Young people under the age of 30 are half the world population, and less than 1% of climate funds go to youth. If you then look at women-led initiatives or initiatives led by indigenous youth or youth in conflict-affected countries, we're talking of even a fraction of the 1%, right? I used to work in Somalia. I remember there it took, on average, I think 7 years to register a business, almost impossible for a young person to access funds alone or open a bank account even, right? So, it's really essential that there's means of accessing resources, because it's that initial trust from a funder ultimately that then unlocks the legitimacy and the trust from other funding partners, right? So what do we do with Youth4Climate? We've been, I had some slides, I don't know if you happen to have them, but I'll keep going in the meantime. So we open up an annual call for proposals to young people in 159 countries, including all of your countries. On average, we receive about 3,000 proposals from young people every year, which is also a huge source of information on what young people out there are contributing, also to the NDCs ultimately. We ask them, how do you see the contribution of your solution to the NDCs or a CBD target? So it's also a capacity building opportunity for them, right, to tell their narrative now that we're going into implementation of the NDCs, right? So we can also help tell that story of the concrete contributions that they're making. And so a huge amount of work that we see young people doing, and I have to acknowledge this is a global opportunity. It's opened up through digital channels, and we do our best to reach out at country level through our networks. But you can imagine how much more is going on out there beyond the digital realm that we're able to reach. So we're funding through the first 3 calls that we've done. We're now funding initiatives in 59 countries. Half of them are women-led. If you go to the next slide, these include Rozvi and the initiative you just heard about in Ukraine. To go to the next slide, our awardees work in all kinds of different areas. These were the areas we opened up this year, and you'll see, I mean, also in past calls, we've had, awardees working on energy in Yemen or on nature, sort of sustainable fashion, leveraging former FARC combatants in Colombia. The climate, peace, and security dimensions have been there, but this year we wanted to explicitly acknowledge it as a priority area and to explicitly call for those peace co-benefits to be brought out in the proposals, right? So through the call this year, we've ended up funding a number of initiatives more explicitly on climate, peace, and security. We've got an awardee in Afghanistan, leveraging women to train households around Kabul on climate and home gardening. We've got an initiative in Somalia on climate security, risk mapping, and community peace building. In Sierra Leone on leveraging arts and STEM for early warning. Indonesia on Islamic faith-based environmental education, et cetera, et cetera. So really quite a diversity of approaches that young people view climate, peace, and security through. Maybe to go to the next slide. We also acknowledge that we're able to fund a rather small number among all the proposals that we receive. And that's partly because we have limited funding. And of course, we're also looking for partners ourselves to be able to scale this, but also acknowledging a lot of the applicants' further capacity development. So we do provide sort of one-on-one mentorship during the application process on how to do budgeting, work planning, because that's the part that people find most tough. But there's so much more we can do, and we also need partners on board helping us to do this capacity development more broadly We've got a knowledge space with about 30,000 members that's accessible in 104 languages, where we can host consultations. Youth organizations can use it as well. We do bring our awardees and youth to events where those voices of concrete solutions are lacking, and the lived experience and expertise from the ground. We tell their stories. We connect them to our UNDP country offices, who have the more country level networks. To go to the next slide. Today, in about an hour, I'm going to be on We Don't Have Time, launching a documentary that we produced this year, now that our first round of projects has been coming to a close, that tells the story of the power of trusting young people as legitimate actors in driving climate solutions. So you can look out for this, and we've got a copy of a catalog we also produced this year that documents the first 2 cohorts of projects that we funded, and Rosby is included in there, so you can take a look. It's also available online. And if you follow us on our channels, if you go to the next slide, if you follow us on Instagram on Youth4Climate, that's where you'll find the links to all of these. And also then at the beginning of the year, probably on 1st of March, we'll announce the launch of the next round of the funding call, which is open, as I said, to young people in 159 countries. It can apply for up to $30,000, and it's open to young individuals, youth-led civil society, and youth-led companies. So also individuals who you might not be formally registered as an organization. I think I'll stop there. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to share and to listen to your wonderful, wonderful work.
Thank you for being with us, because I also want to mention that I think that Youth4Climate is an amazing program, and also because all the communication was very nice. It was such a pleasure to work with you, and we're still working till the end of this year. But yeah, I forgot to mention that Rosby is also an awardee of the Youth4Climate initiative. Finish, because this is what we what I wanted to talk about with you. But maybe let's just list this things, because we were talking about enabling youth agency. According to the UNDP report, or UNDP report, Bridging Generation Pathways to Youth Inclusion. So they really talk about, in this document, they really talk about how young people are disproportionately affected by the climate crisis, but they also talk about ways how to engage young people into all of these conversations. So basically, they all revolve around mental health, because again, there's this kind of nexus of climate change, conflict, and mental health, which contributes to how young people do they have desire to actually fight for. Are they also in despair and have no hope to do anything? There's also investment in education and skill development, and about podcasts, because they also highlighted that podcast is one of the innovative ways how to talk to people, and thanks to the UNDP to supporting this initiative. We're also talking about meaningful seat at the decision-making table, and the conversation and collaboration with already seasoned experts, so that young people can learn directly from them. So this has been our panel. It is coming to an end. I think it was really productive, and I thank all of you for talking about your countries, even though that the topic might be a little bit hard to talk about, because we're still going through a lot of challenges. And I want to say, as kind of the finishing line, that glory to Ukraine, Syria is free. Freedom, peace, and justice for Sudan, and from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you so much for being with us today.